is what we are going to discuss over the next 10 minutes. And there is no bigger picture in India than politics. So to avoid going over the same ground in two different sets of discussion, what we have decided is that for the first 10 minutes in this tete-a-tete with Swami, we are going to focus on the politics of the budget. And later, when we have the other panelists join us, then we will cover economics. So the politics of this budget, Swami. Now, you have written in your column that this budget did not give away freebies. It was not a populist budget. It was very unlike a pre-election budget. Now, how did Sonia Gandhi ever allow such a budget to go through?
Very good question. As you said, this is the last full budget that this government will present before the 2014 election. 5 years ago, Chidambaram presented a similar pre-election budget. In that, he had a 60,000 crore waiver farm loans for medium and small farmers.
Right.
He expanded that rural employment guarantee scheme to cover the whole country. At the end of it all, what happened? They actually won the 2009 election. So everybody said, my God, this is a proven strategy. You can buy votes, you can buy an election. So everybody expected this time, how is he going to buy the election? And as you said, there was, for the very first time, there was no attempt to buy an election through populist giveaways. On the contrary, this is the very first time that a finance minister has got up with a straight face and saying people will vote for us if I promote economic growth and bring down inflation. They say, this is the kind of talk of guys in three-piece suits like Andy. How is the interest of the arm Admi and the arm foreign investor suddenly become the same? Good question. The answer goes back to the entire politics of the previous 5 years. When they got elected in 2009, people said, now they got elected on their own without left-wing support and this will be a great reformist government. They did absolutely nothing for 3 years. They were called a ministry of paralysis, a ministry of non-decision making. Why? Because the majority was so fragile that if they lost Mamata Banerjee, they were converted to a minority. So in effect, it was extremely fragile. Sonia Gandhi's instructions were clear. Please, gentlemen, don't come to me with adventurous suggestions on how to improve the country. Be quite sure that whatever you suggest, we must not rock the boat, we must last 5 years. The overarching question was, how do I last 5 years?
So
therefore, the so-called paralysis of decision making was not paralysis. It was intelligently thought out policy that, on most things, if Mamata says, no, you immediately draw back. I said, you only take those decisions where everybody agrees. However, by the middle of 2012, the overarching question had changed, 3.5 years over. Now the question was, how do I get re-elected? And the answer to that is very different from how do I survive for 5 years. This way you see a situation where your image is that of being spineless, of being indecisive, thoroughly corrupt. Business as usual, you are voted out. You have to do something. Till then, I think Manmohan Singh, whenever he went to see Sonia and would say, madam, the high fiscal deficit, and her eyes would glaze over. And he said, high current account deficit, her eyes would glaze over for even more. And finally he would say, madam, but now the credit agencies are threatening to downgrade us. Once again she must have been saying, why is my time being wasted in this fashion? But the question was, said, madam, if we are downgraded at this point of time, billions of dollars will flow out, the rupee will crash from 55 to 60 rupees. At that point, madam, inflation will hit 15% in an election year and we will lose. So suddenly for the first time, what you call good economics or the compulsions that the foreign credit rating agencies became completely coincidental with what Sonia needed for the re-election. So of course she would have asked, so how do we fix it? A little bribe, a little giveaway? They said, no madam, you have to reform your policies across the board in order to re-establish credibility. You have to be seen to be a reformist government that is actually serious on kick-starting growth and on bringing down inflation and bringing down the fiscal deficit. You have to be willing to impose a certain amount of pain.
But what about Sonia Gandhi's kitchen cabinet, the National Advisory Council? Do you think they wouldn't be fuming with this 10,000 crore rupee or 100 billion rupee allocation that he has made for, Mr. Chidambaram has made for food security bill, which is yet to be passed?
The kitchen cabinet, as you put it, is less than the kitchen. It's a place where, I said, when people say that when people are seen with when the cook is seen with the madam of the house, people get the impression that the cook is very important. It's not really the case. So when Madam was interested in new menus, yes, it looked okay. But now the thing had changed. So it's very clear that to win the election, what is required. So at this particular point of time, I think equally, the question was, can we win, can we buy the election? You know, people, including Soumitra Chaudhary, the Planning Commission, including Chidambaram, had done their calculations saying, Madam, it was a mistake to believe we won the 2009 election because of those freebies. Why? Because we actually swept all the cities, all the metro cities. And we did very badly in the poor rural states like Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Orissa. So clearly it was not the farm loan waiver or the rural employment program that won re-election. What won us re-election was the fact that we had 9% growth and the fact that inflation had been brought down.
Well, now growth is 4.5% in the December quarter.
And consumer price inflation is still at 10%.
Right.
So it's very clear that, in other words, the real winning strategy of 2009 was not what we thought it was.
Right.
And we now have to go back to what really won us the election, which is accelerate GDP growth and tame inflation. And for this, you have to do a number of things which on the face of it appear difficult. For instance, earlier the theory was we can't afford to raise any oil prices because this will cause inflation. And you had the situation that we didn't raise prices and we had 10% inflation. And all the other countries which raised it, they only had 3% inflation. They said, Madam, all that you're doing is stoking the fiscal deficit without solving the problem. Gingerly, they said we will increase diesel prices just 50 paise per month. First time they did it, everybody crossed their fingers. What happened to inflation? Actually came down. I mean, I think that was an excellent signal that the notion of ever cascading cost plus economics is not good economics at all.
But Swami, now this budget is not completely free of populism either. For instance, this women's bank. I mean, why on earth would the women of India need a bank of their own? Sure, I mean, it might be nice for them to have a police station of their own, where there are women prostitutes.
Rape-free police stations. Instead, we have a rape-free bank, which makes less sense, you might say, right? The answer is that when you are presenting a budget, it is always, it's not just this budget. Every single budget will have some provision for every vote bank. They are not very important provisions, they don't grab the headlines. But there will be this for, scheduled castes, for scheduled tribes, for Muslims, for women. It is obligatory to have a certain number of schemes. Many of those are typically financed not necessarily by the budget, but by the nationalized banks or by somebody else. So there had to be something. So in this thing, since people say, what are you doing for the ordinary man? So instead for women, I'm putting up a bank. For the youth, I'm creating a new skilled employment program. He's put 1,000 crores for that also. And he has put food security. Yes, a modest allocation for a modest sum.
Could it go up later during the year once the bill is passed? That's the major fear.
It will go up. In the first place, we are not quite sure how it will go. But if the amount of subsidy is fixed, it may not go up so much. If the price remains fixed, right now you say I'm going to give rice at 3 rupees and wheat at 2 rupees. Now, suppose the prices which the government buys goes up. Then what happens to the same price? There's still no clarity on how they're going to fix that. But the immediate outgo in this year is going to be limited. It could go up later. But if this particular crowd gets re-elected, I think they now understand that there has to be a fixed subsidy, not a fixed price, whether it's diesel or food.
Right. Now, given enough time, Swami, I'm sure that you and I can also come up with a spreadsheet which will show FY14 fiscal deficit at 4.5%, nicely coming down from 5.2%. We can also show capital spending going up by 37% and the government's consumption spending growing only moderately by 11%. But are these assumptions realistic? I mean, can ministries really spend 37% extra capital spending?
You got it. The answer is no. And any ministry struggles to increase spending by even 20%. But that's where the question comes in. I think partly it can be done because what they've really done is they postponed lots of spending from March to April. So it looks as though there's a great pullback in 1 year followed by huge expansion in the next year. Smoke and mirrors. Basically, we just put something from 1 month into the other.
And because it's all cash budgeting, so...
That's right. But over and above that, I think that is where the cushion always exists. In terms of non-planned spending like salaries, interest, cost, defense, the ability to cut in the middle of the year is not much. In the case of planned spending, it can be cut and has been cut in the past. So that is the cushion he has. It is not the best form of budgeting. It is not the best way of expenditure control, but it's the only one that he has. That is the one that will be exercised if during the year we find that either the revenue or spending projections are going out of line.
Yeah. Now, Swami, we will continue our discussion when we have the other panelists, but before I let you go and to end this tete-a-tete, now you have been giving marks to Indian budgets and you've done it for how many years? More than 10 years. How many marks out of 10 would you give this budget?
I gave this budget 7.5 out of 10. I think it's the highest mark I've given in the last 10 years. I truly believe it's an act of boldness, a huge gamble, a risky one, a courageous one, and one I think that will actually work.
Thank you very much, Swami.